Thanks everybody for coming and to the Burnaby Writers Society for organizing. I was thinking this morning that my very first award from one of my very first poems came from the Burnaby Writers Poetry Contest, and that was like 1999 or something. So you all have been at this for a long time, and it's important. It's important for us to gather and to be in good company as we share our work. So thank you. I would just like to take a moment also to honor the ancestors of these territories. I know we're coming from all over the place, but just with gratitude to be able to gather on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish nations. It's an honor, and I just like to begin there. Today, I am going to read a couple of poems from Blue Gate, which is from 2021. And then I'm going to reach back and read one poem from the first book, which I've been thinking about, partly because one of the questions, sometimes you can see questions that move all the way through your writing. And these days, as we try to survive the war and the violence in both in Europe and in the Middle East, it's difficult to trust that language can have any power. And I've been thinking about it also because language is being so misused across these discourses as well. So I decided I'd reach back into an older poem, and then I have a couple of new poems that I'll read, and then we'll finish off with one very quiet one for the ending. To enter the ceremony broken, arrive quietly. Lift gently your face to what is simple. What is good will find an unfolding, the way water spills unexpectedly from a tap, or calmly waves ribboning a wet bend of sand. Be unconcerned by the brash rancor of cities built over the bodies of these lands, the ones who have cared for, survived. Enter the ceremony like water, arrive quietly, palms gentled, open. So this next poem is a poem that dates back to the Picton inquiry. So Picton has just passed recently, but this was in Vancouver, the first of the murdered and missing women's inquiries. And then since then, we've had a national inquiry, and the inquiry here did not go well, and all of the women's organizations pulled out because the families were not being treated very well. And they decided that on the first day of the inquiry, they would take over the intersection that was right beside the very tall glass fancy building downtown where it was happening. And I didn't have to do any of the organizing around that, but on the day that of the first day of the inquiry, I got a phone call to say, we just need one more pair of hands to hold up the quilt. So across the time that the state was responding to the atrocities, the families actually got together and made a quilt for the ones who were lost to them. So I said yes, and I jumped on a bus, left my office, jumped on a bus, and went down. And so this is where the poem begins, kind of. Something in the long bone of the sigh asks music. Homespun the notes, rustle and sure, trouble her, stir, low at the join of the hip, the waiting so long her head bent toward the belly of things underneath as water, so long, and inside the city today is shorn, unmasked. The metal and mirror inquiry shudders. Drum circle of terrible knowledge spirals up the intersection. Hearts steam to vapor. In air, the gut singing, the torn from us presences come to shine as daylight's last flare its hot detox. Then the charged fuse of evening, and she in her calm feet, her blue dark bones, listens, and the chords spill low at the join of the hip, this movement in solace. And then this is just a simpler poem about relationship in the sense of, you know, so much conflict in the world, and also between and amongst us as individuals, there's always work, there's always conflict to encounter and work to be done. So this is kind of a one way through that I was aware of. The kind one with beautiful hands brings me a Pyrex pie plate of sludge, leftover paint blue, gelatinous mound with an edge crust of mold. We pour it through a square mesh screen. The muck of it oozes and globs down to a low bin under the table. In this way, all that is no longer needed, no longer useful, slips away. The bundle of harm undone, uncarried. In the screen frame, only the color of sky remains. After, I sit under green dark leaf bells of elm, my back to its trunk, huge, steady ringing in of more than 150 springs. I listen, the lines of my hands sky-veined with light. Wind then, and the boughs loosen, the way limbs of horses loosen, broaden in gait when released into unkempt meadow. Okay, so here's the old one. In this book, I was working a lot with dreams, so often the images that come might seem a little bit otherworldly because they emerge from dream, but also I was working really hard in community where it was a time when migrant folks were beginning to be incarcerated for arriving, which was new and unsettling for many of us. And we did a lot of work around that. And I was also mothering, so all that is in here somewhere. As though the night came open in my hands, and I held it, blue dark and shivering, until a spiral appeared, coiled like the fossil of a circle shell. I traveled its coiling backward into pain harder than lightning, into days and days, the years of small, when I wanted my body to relent its willful breathing, to leave me, and backwards into love, when every particle of muscle, all the cell waters, grit of my teeth urged in unison, and daughters answered, sweet, exquisite heads, lunge of their bodies' tenderness through mine, and how that same spiral traveled me, when without a pulse its mystery bridged my stalled flesh into diastole and breathing, when without knowledge it arced and leapt beyond me, blessing strands of DNA into voices of my children, their dreaming and graceful limbs. Now, the question of our lives together, I hold it in my hands. It is the color of this night, wide as hope, deep as dying. Tonight the pieces are heavy and the heart coil does not stir. There are words for suffering, words for beauty, no language has deciphered, yet they exist. They exist in unrecorded maps of whales, tracks of turtles down beaches bordered with tourists, and the 150 million humans who travel the planet without home. In the tawny flank of a mountain lion vanishing into the sustenance of hills, and a farmer stricken with debt, a failed well, a failed crop her land was never meant to grow. In the hands of women refugees selling firewood inside the chain link of Dadaab, sewing for $1.50 an hour in the prisons of British Columbia. They exist in the bones of a woman walking plain, a familiar path near her home, where the water rounds softly green, green, black, and calm with dark arriving, where the tender and unspoken creature of her resonates with 40 million years of shale. There are words for suffering, words for beauty, no language has deciphered. There are words. So the next two poems are newer ones. I started to write a series of psalms for Gaza, and there's a long story about how I got to that, but I'll spare you that one. So these are fairly new. There's maybe about, I was planning to write 7, but then um, the conflict has gone on so far and so long, and so there's more than that. So I'll just, later on when I gather the poems into a collection, I'll decide which ones to keep and which ones to let go. So this was the first one that I wrote at the very onset of the conflict. And, on October 8, I wrote to our government and said, ceasefire now, because we know this part of the world and we know the intergenerational nature of the conflict and the harms that are carried, as Jackie so wisely reminded us. And it's not to blame. It's just, we know what this kind of harm does. So how can we keep doing it? Anyway, at that point, I was just feeling completely helpless. So this is the first one. This is called Seed Psalm. In the north, these nights, meteor showers, pin thin, streak the new moon dark. Half a world away, night sky is rocket lob fire, white phosphorus blight. Carlotta calls from Haifa, says, no, no, we love the Palestinians and the Palestinians love us. It's our leaders who are lost. In the morning, I carry out sunflower seeds for the birds in 2 glass pie plates, 50 years old from my mother's house. Each kernel hard-shelled, unevenly striped, black, white, aliveness enclaved. I have to bend to place them, reach small mercy under shelter of eaves, safe from wind, rain. My sternum shudders, harrows, heart a struggle knot, a parch clot. Even as prepared statements yammer the globe, leaders' fleet words loft, disembodied and cruel. Vigils condoned, rallies condemned, surveillances, threats, arrests. And Carlotta says, no, no, it's our leaders who are lost. Their deal-making collaterals, the dead and wounded, the missing, uncared for, as though some bodies do not matter. Lawns of alliances clipped for news shows, secret intelligence swapped fast and high above the people as stocks for munitions rise. 2 trillion silent war bucks again. And uselessly, as always, scorecards of war crimes parse the suffering, parcel it, legal, illegal. A man with a silk tie says, this story is inevitable. Carlotta says, no, no, we love. So stricken, I carry her voice, the seeds, rootless, germinal, each one a life. I carry them out where what is next? What is next? And a yellow kite of late sunlight swings across our darkened home, tilts the room all the way to the front door, doorway of confounded grief, speechlessness, where the garden's shadows, long familiar, dissembling now, also waver, also lowly sing. And this one at the moment is called Water Psalm, but it might change. I It's a lighter one, so just letting you know. Water Psalm. After tacos and beer with a good friend, our conversation a well-worn jean jacket, surrounded all through the next day as the sun rounds the corner of the house, pours in agate light and gleam, as when a blue whale surfaces its arc and slow roll, my heart goes baleen, sieves away the polyester call of false intimacies, the tailings of empire, this genocide which does not unfold but is perpetrated, its heinous dehydrations. On this day, what arrives is muscular, durable, buoyancy of care, liberation of openness across the table, across the campuses of the world, and that millennia-old song the whale knows, bright, deep. Thank you. And I just have one more, and if I may, this is a poem that I wrote originally for a very good friend of mine who passed away, but given that there's been so much carnage, also in my own community, some of them that I'm connected to, there have been several uh, celebrations of passing in the last week or so, some of them from old age, some of them because of the opioid crisis. And I was remembering this morning when I was a little girl that on Ash Wednesday, we used to go to church. We went to church all the time. I am not religious, but nevertheless. And they would put dust on your forehead and say, you know, you come from dust and to dust you will return. And some part of me understood that as an opportunity to practice humility. Like, but it was also kind of like a bit of a reprimand, like you're nothing. But now, when I think about returning to earth, it kind of feels like quite an honor if we consider a way of living where our footprints become smaller and gentler. Um, and so I would just invite everybody to consider the notion of returning to earth and also the fact that dust always keeps moving. And so even though we're in this moment of real challenge and tremendous change, which could be a hopeful change, but might not be, um, that that the movement in our lives and the movement of little particles of dust, um, it's reassuring to me. So this will be the last poem. It's called As You Come to Dust. As you come to dust, let its settling be rare. Let it carry the great low hum of mountain, tune of sap, notes of summer leaves under high tide pull, under low, that hush before the opening of wings. Let it caress as hands have done the bare feet of a fraught child, an adventuring child. Let its sparks of want, burn softly away. Let its final quiet be a listening, solace for difficult, necessary voices. Let its listening protect the ones who remain. Let it rest, lift, soften the edges of wind, lift again, and be carried. Thank you very much for your careful listening, everyone.